And we left off talking about Giotto. We have one more artist, actually two more artists, to quickly talk about in the 14th century. You guys know how centuries work, right? When we say the 14th century, we're talking about the 1300s, right? 15th century, the 1400s, just like we're in the 21st century now, the 2000s, right? I still get people who sort of mess that up in their minds, and it's easy enough to do this because our historians have swanky terms for these things, like the Trecento for early 1300s in Italy. But don't worry too much about that. We were looking at Giotto. Giotto was active primarily in the town of Florence, which was the epicenter of the early Renaissance, and historians in the Renaissance period talk about Giotto as being the real first light, the beginning of the Renaissance in painting. And he's roughly contemporary. If you know your literature, with Dante, who writes the Inferno. In fact, he knew Dante. They're both in Florence at the same time, right around the year 1300. Right? So they're part of the same political situation. They're part of the same renewal of interest in ancient Rome. Right? That's what Renaissance means, a renewal, a revival of interest, and in particular, ancient Rome. Now, with that comes a lot of other baggage. With that comes ancient Greece as well, because the Romans loved the Greeks. But our Italians in the 14th century really care about the Romans, because it's all about their nation. It's all about their own history. You know, they're not so keyed in on the Greeks, although they like their stuff well enough. But they know them through Roman copies. They know them through how Rome adopted that stuff. And that's what they're most interested in reviving, is the ideas of ancient Rome. Right? So, Giotto's in Florence. Now, what makes Florence this epicenter for Renaissance art? Why does it happen there and not somewhere else? It happens other places too, kind of. But Rome or Florence is really the hotbed. And part of the reason for that is that Rome is part of a new kind of social structure in Italy. And this new social structure is one that breaks with the traditional medieval social structure. Then you know for history class, what was the European social structure during the Middle Ages? The basic social structure that almost all of Europe appeared during the Middle Ages. What is it called? Monarchy, parliament, right? That's a subset of it. Monarchy is definitely part of it. We're not done with monarchy yet either. We're way before Louis XIV system, right? By about 300 years. So they ain't out of it yet. But the monarchy is part of a socio-political system that governs all of Europe from around the 8th century onward. That's the next. Feudalism, bingo, feudalism. Feudalism basically says, the feudal system, feudalism, basically was a government system where monarchs were in charge of lords, counts, right? Lords, counts, dukes, etc. Dukes. Right? In exchange, these people fought for the king and owed the king an undying feudal oath of fidelity, right? And then these lords, counts, and dukes didn't parcel their property out to the peasants who worked it for them in return for protection. Right? So the peasants who worked the land could never move up, right? They worked the land for their lords. They gave what they made off the land in return for some sustenance to them, who turned around and gave it. Right? And above the kingdom actually be the emperor up here. The Holy Roman Emperor, even larger. Right? The feudal system, okay? Now the feudal system is based on land. It's based on working acreage, okay? Florence, where Giotto's working, is different from that because it's a city. And cities don't really fit into the feudal system. Because it's not about land. What do you do in a city? You're a painter, right? You're a painter, you're a candlestick, right? And you get furniture, you're a woodworker, right? You make pots, whatever. Right? You're doing something where what you do every day makes your status in life. You're successful. successful, you get ahead, right? That has nothing to do with the feudal system. And so what we find in these capitalist cities, we can use that sort of Marxist term, capitalism exists as a term until the 19th century, this idea that you make your lot in life, right? That typifies about 3 or 4 cities in Europe beginning around the 12th century, where they start to free themselves in the feudal system. Paris is one of them. Right up north, Bruges in Belgium, which you don't hear much of, except right, is one of them. Prague is one of them. Florence is one of them. Okay? And with that change in social structure, but the idea that they want something new. They want something different. And so the Renaissance needs to grow up there because it addresses the concern of this newly powerful group of people who didn't inherit it from daddy. At least not necessarily. After a while they did. Right? But they made their lot in life. Whereas a monarch, a lord, a king, a duke, even a peasant, is there at that place in society because that's where they were born. Born a peasant, die a peasant. Born a lord, you die a lord. Nice, huh? Doesn't matter what you do. Right? Just ride it out. You can be a real crappy king and die a king. Because it's not ever much something through history, right? 1410, Charles VI in France. Literally crazy. Quite literally crazy. And yet, less France exists 100 years more. But he's there, right? He's head of the ship. At the Battle of Washington. I mean, that's just crazy. Right? It doesn't matter. Now, if you're a crazy carpenter, you're not going to be very successful, right? So this new Renaissance, this new realism that we've been talking about, right? This interest in the everyday world. Paintings that look like the kind of space you inhabit. Paintings that are filled with wonderful details that remind us of the world around us. This has great appeal to this new class of people in various parts of Europe. And in Italy, Florence is one of the epicenters of that. Right? Of that new merchant class of people who want a different kind of art that reflects their own interests, their own tastes, their own concerns in a way that we hadn't seen before. Now, all of that said, Florence was not the only city. It was just the most important one. And nearby to Florence, in the city of Siena, which will come up on a map in just a second, is Giotto's, the only artist up there in the early part of the 14th century, around 1300, the only artist who could possibly rival Giotto for fame and greatness and an interest in reality, naturalism, and humanism in the same way. And this is Duccio. I'm not giving either of their full names, right? These are just their nicknames, right? Duccio de Buoninsegna, Giotto di Bongone. But you don't have to worry about their last names, right? You're all of a sudden on a first-name basis with them, which is nice, right? So Duccio and Giotto are exact contemporaries. Right? They're both active from around 1290 through around the 1330s or so. Okay? And they both stand at the head of this new interest in realism. The big difference we'll see on one hand is that Giotto's in Florence primarily. Duccio is in Siena, S-I-E-N-A. And I've got a map coming up in a few slides. Right? But what I wanted to talk about with Duccio is some of the differences between the two of them. Now, they both have a lot of similarities, right? For example, with these two pictures, they're both very, very large. The Duccio is 13 feet across, right? Remember, the Giotto is about 10 or 11 feet tall. So they're both massive works, okay? So the scale is very similar, but so is the iconography. Remember that word we were using, iconography, subject matter? Each of them shows the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Christ, the Madonna, with Christ on her lap, seated on an elaborately decorated throne with marble inlay, and surrounded by a series of saints, arranged sort of up into the distance like on choir risers, and splaying out on either side. So they share a certain iconography, a certain subject matter. Both include angels as well as the saints. For the Duccio, they're right around her head on either shoulder, if you will. Right? And you'll also notice that with both of them, the color scheme is similar too, specifically with the Virgin and Child. She wears a blue robe, a deep, deep ultramarine blue robe that's darkened a bit through time, with a red tunic or blouse underneath it. Christ is wearing pink in both of them as well. And in each of them, she has her hand coming across in a very similar pattern, maybe in a slightly different place than Duccio's work, as she cradles his hip with her other hand to support the weight that they are illustrating. So, subject matter iconography really quite similar in the two of them. Okay so far? Right? Some differences. Obviously, Duccio has quite a few more saints, more angels as well. And in fact, the ones that we can identify, they're quite different saints as well. They're all saints who had a local connection to the city of Siena. Okay? We'll talk a bit more about that as we move into this. Okay? So the iconography has similarities and differences that we can point to. Maestà, the term for Duccio's altarpiece, is simply the old Italian term for majesty. Can you see the similarity looking at the structure of that word? Maestà, majesty. Right? And what it refers to is that this is the Virgin in majesty. This is the Virgin in heaven, enthroned as the Queen of heaven at the end of time. Right? A Maestà. We could call Giotto's Madonna enthroned a Maestà if we wanted to as well. Right? These are terms that historians have given to these. Right? But Duccio's work is known very well in Siena and is actually recorded in the city archives as the Maestà, so this is why we refer to it with that title. Okay? Now there are also similarities and differences in style. Let's look closely at the torso of the Virgin and Child. Remember that Giotto was typified by having a really sort of solid physical structure. Everything seemed to occupy a three-dimensional space in a rather boxy kind of way. Right? Figures seemed solid. They seemed grounded. They seemed almost as if, and this is often true of Giotto, almost as if they're like carved out of milk cartons or something. Look at the angel, you can still see in the lower right corner. Look at Christ's body. There's sort of a boxy nature to it. And that's true for the faces as well. Duccio's figures are more graceful and elegant. Look at the two faces, for example. Duccio's features are much more attenuated. They're sort of stretched and elongated. Look at the two Jesuses. Duccio's is more credibly a boy. Right? Cuter, plumper. Right? In particular, look at the way the drapery, the edge of the drapery looks. In Giotto's, the Virgin's robe that goes up over the top of her head kind of hangs in this basic, lowercase n shape on the right. Yeah? And as it hangs down, it kind of comes down in a very straight line, a sort of slight arc in Giotto's work. Right? Now follow with your eye the edge of Duccio's drapery on the left. You'll notice that even over the top of her head, it starts to cut back and forth and move. And then as it works its way down, it sweeps around, almost like calligraphy, right? Penmanship, as it sweeps down. And he highlights it with these bits of gold that really accentuate it. Look at the edge of Christ's robe here. On Giotto's, it just kind of ends with the figure. It gives it that sort of hard edge, drawn, sort of boxiness, And then look what happens here. See, there's that gilded edge. And look at this sort of beautiful, sort of lyrical line that has a sense of penmanship, that has a sense of calligraphy to it, that gives it a greater sense of elegance and grace. That's a hallmark of these. So within this early Renaissance style, where both artists are really keyed in on humanity and realism, within that there's room for variance. based on each artist's own personality. Right? And Duccio tends toward this sort of calligraphy quality, this sort of graceful elegance that's also picked up in other things that he does. For example, his colors are more supersaturated. They're brighter, they're richer, they're more vibrant. Giotto's tend to be a little on the pastel side. Not everywhere the same, but if you look at the angels, the same violet and green, that you can still see that's not blocked out in the Giotto. Even the color of Christ's robe. You can see that it's kind of sort of like a sherbet color, right? Like pistachio ice cream, you know? Rather than Duccio, which has that sort of sense of saturation, of really vibrant, bright colors. And we'll see that with lots of different. So there's a difference here between the two of them. And the reason I'm making a point of this is that in Florence, where Giotto is the beginning of the Renaissance, we see a lot of artists in Florence really following his kind of boxier, more delineated, solidly three-dimensional style. And we'll see artists in Siena, where Duccio is active, pick up on his more lyrical, elegant, opulent style. When you see this a bit more here, in the cloth that's hanging behind the Virgin Mary. Look at how, can you make that out even in the back? How much time he's put into the texture of this cloth here, or the beauty of that brocade that you see here, or even along the edges of her robe, we have that same element. And this is true everywhere we look at Duccio's work, that there is an opulence, an elegance. It looks more expensive in a way. It really pleases your eye. Whereas Giotto is really working on that whole mental concept of trying to get the three-dimensionality in, right? Here's another detail, and maybe you get a sense of the variation of the different robes. And granted, both these slides are 5 times removed from the real thing, right? You have to go see the real thing to make it out. So lucky, we got a Giotto you can see, and it hangs on this wall, and a Duccio hangs right here, and you can go make the comparison yourself at the National Gallery. But look at all the different robes of the different things that you see here. Look at the interesting brocading, right? Patterning to those robes. It's a treat for the eye. And that interest we saw with the Christ child, of that sort of calligraphic outline of the robes. We see in almost every one of the figures here as well. The colors are also deeply, deeply saturated, right? So Duccio is similar to Giotto in a lot of ways, but he's moving kind of in a new and different direction. One that will be typical for artists working in Duccio's hometown. And now I finally have it coming out. The town of Siena, which as you can see on the map is just due south from Florence. It's less than a day's ride. And these two cities were deeply embroiled in an ongoing, sometimes friendly, sometimes not, rivalry. Not Duccio and Giotto themselves per se, but Florence and Siena were sometimes even at arms during the period that we're talking about. Siena, too, is a major mercantile center, a major craft and banking center, and is, at least in the early part of the 14th century, Florence's only real rival when it comes to Renaissance art. Rome isn't even in the picture yet, right? Rome isn't in the picture. Well, we'll talk about this in a little bit for various reasons. But these are the two epicenters, right? Florence numero uno, as they might say in Italian, and Siena numero due, the second. But not to hear the Sienese tell it, right? Now, Duccio's work really set a standard for the city of Siena, partly because of its location. It was commissioned to go on the high altar of the Cathedral of Siena. So Giotto's piece that we were looking at, remember that big Madonna that we saw at the beginning of class, that was made for one of the numerous parish churches around the city of Florence, not for the main cathedral. Duccio's work is for the high altar of Siena's cathedral. And Sienna's Cathedral is dedicated to the Virgin Mary, the Cathedral of Our Lady. Right? And the Virgin Mary was also the patron saint of the city of Siena. So that meant that this altarpiece in the cathedral depicting their patron saint was, for the people of Siena, a really big deal. You know what a patron saint is? Do you guys know this or not? It's not a term we use much anymore. Right? Every city had a particular saint to whom the city was dedicated, and to whom they looked in times of trouble to protect them, the one they would pray to the most. Right? And even to this day, a lot of cities still have patron saints. I don't know what the patron saint of Arlington is. Maybe somebody out there does. But somebody told me before, and I totally promptly forgotten. Right? Suffice to say that through the Middle Ages, everyone did have a patron saint. Right? It wasn't always the Virgin Mary. It might have been, I don't know, St. Roch or something like that. And yes, there was a St. Roch. In any event, when Duccio's work was commissioned by the wardens of Siena Cathedral, they drew up a contract with him that survives. And it basically said, Duccio, you've got to paint the whole 9 yards. Can someone in the back close the door for me? Thank you, that would be a great help. And I'll talk more slowly so you can get back to that. Great. Thanks a lot, I appreciate that. The contract to Duccio stipulated that he shouldn't use his shop assistants to paint any of it. Because that was kind of normal. You ran a big shop, you're going to paint a 13 by 7 foot painting, right? It's a big deal. It's a bigger deal, as we'll see in a second, than even that. The contract said you can't use any people to help. And then the other thing that happened was that when Duccio was done, it took him 3 years, 1308 to 11. We know when the contract was started. We know when he finished. When Duccio finished, the entire city shut down so that they could have a parade to transfer the painting from Duccio's studio to the cathedral. Every church bell in town was ringing. Everybody marched in rank of status in the city behind the church fathers with torches, right? Singers and other bells ringing and horns blaring as they picked up this monster painting, 13 by 7 feet, and walked it through the streets of Siena to install it in the cathedral. A day of great civic pride. Right? I think your text even has part of the account of Duccio's work, being marched through the city. Here's a ground plan of the cathedral, and the red line, something I put there, is roughly where it was placed, right? Just before the choir, so that anybody attending the Mass would see the priest standing in front of it, this then dominating the background behind him, right? And then other times, when church services were not in session, you could walk around the back of it. You could see it from all sides. And that's important to us because Duccio's Maestà altar is a shadow of what it originally was. We talked about that with Giotto, didn't we? A lot of works we have today are separated from their original grouping, right? And Duccio's picture originally had, I think, 51 other painted scenes that went above it, below it, on the back, above it on the back, and below it on the back. And these have been split up around various collections around the world, right? So here's what the Maestà altar probably originally was something similar to this. There was this predella down below. We talked about a predella before, a series of scenes below the main body of the picture. It originally bent around the sides, so the first image here probably sat looking this way. Ditto the last scene here. It was a three-dimensional piece, right? With other things on the cell down below. Pinnacles up above. And whereas this simply shows the Virgin sitting there in heaven, these all tell different parts of the life of Christ and the life of the Virgin Mary. 51 different paintings. You begin to see why it took him the better part of 3 years, right? In addition to painting this, on the back of it, there are all these scenes of the Passion of Christ. Just inside your text that talks about the different parts of Christ's life. the infancy of the kid. Right? This is adult life, what we call the mission. And the last week of his life, where he tortured to death, what we call passion. Right? Passion is here, infancy on the front, life of ministry or mission up above and down below here, the life of the Virgin Mary. That's a really complex group of paintings that Duccio painted for the wardens of the cathedral and was marched from his cathedral, or from his studio, to the cathedral in this huge parade. Right? Now, like I mentioned, these things get cut up over time, and really the only thing that's left in Siena, if you go there, is the main body on the left, and the stuff that's on the immediate back of it. The rest of it is all over the world. Right? And what was bad for Siena is good for DC. Right? We've got one of them. So, perhaps one of the most important works in the National Gallery is part of the predella of the Maisdorf altarpiece. The second scene from Christ's infancy, which shows the birth of Christ. The term we use for that is the nativity. Right? It's surrounded by prophets. We're not going to spend a lot of time with them. We're going to focus on the image of the birth of Christ and look at these things that make Duccio's work stand out. The bright colors, the opulent elegance of the work. And at the same time, we'll also talk about the iconography. But we now know the historical background, right? It was part of the Maisdorf altarpiece. So here is a slightly bigger image, right? Can you make out, okay, so this is where Christ is born. Can you pick out where Christ is here? In the crib, right? Pretty simple. He's right there in the manger. The word manger means to eat. It's the feed bag for the ox and the ass that we see directly behind it, right? So there's Christ, swaddling clothes. Mary's looking at him, right? If you're having trouble picking it up, right? He's just right there. It's Jesus. The ox and the ass always appear in these. They were seen as symbols of the world, the entirety of the world. Oxes obey their masters. Christian theologians said they therefore symbolize Christians who heard the message and obeyed. Donkeys are belligerent. You can't tell them what they do and they kick against you. And so theologians in the Middle Ages said they represented the Jews who refused to accept Jesus, even though they heard the story. Right? Now that anti-Semitic side is always kind of part of this, but that's why they're always there. They're always there in the nativity scenes, an ox and an ass. And they remain there for other reasons. There's the tradition, but this is one. Which one is the Virgin Mary? The mom. The one in blue, sitting on that great, huge, red beanbag chair. Right? And oddly, that almost always appears as well. Never really as well modeled as the rest, but she's sitting there in blue. Notice the color scheme is exactly the same again, right? Blue overcoat with the red robe underneath. We'll talk a bit about color symbolism in just a second. Got a hand up. Yeah. That is a halo indeed. And you'll notice at this point, and there are halos all across the front as well, right? That the halos sit on the same surface that the painting sits on. Does that make sense? In other words, Duccio gives us this cave, right? Right? And built into the mountaintop is this, and Joseph was a carpenter. This was a carpenter, right? Built into that cave. And there's a sense of three-dimensionality, right? You sort of move back into the cave. Her robe is modeled in three dimensions. We take it down here, have modeling. So there's a sense of three-dimensionality. But there's always that halo that just sits there flat, right? Doesn't do this, right? Doesn't do that. Right? Just sit there as if it's a circle on the surface, rather than a three-dimensional element that we see here on the scene. In about 100 years, that will change. So they'll start to shine in the halo in perspective. Right? But at this point, the halos are simply there flat on the surface, and they're there to indicate the holiness of the Holy Spirit, right? In this case, the angels up above that you see on either side of the mountain, right, who are worshiping Christ, her, and the fellow in king. Who's he? Anybody know? The old man next to the Virgin Mary. Yes, give it a shot. Joseph, exactly right, her husband, Joseph, right, named Joseph. So, he gets the halos just as she does, just as Jesus does. Yeah. They do, you just can't see them, right, because they're against the gold background. So you notice, okay, first, some of the cracking you're seeing that looks like very much bright mud or something, it happens through time. That things get exposed. But if you look more closely, you'll notice that they do, right? And then you start to see places where, right, it's still there. And even in these areas, the background has been manipulated a bit, or called tools. That means they took a tool and they sort of made a design on it, right? So that even where you can't see it, here and here, it actually is there. So I don't know if you can see this, but I can see it up here. But right there is the edge of the halo. Can you see that? Right? And so they are there everywhere. And the only people that don't have them are those two people down below, these two people over here, and, you know, the donkey, right, and the dogs, and whatnot. All the dogs should be, right, because they're the best thing about it. Anyway, okay, so does that get you right there? You have that? So, Joseph, right, is the husband of the Virgin Mary, but he is not the father of Christ, right? Because the father of Christ is God. She had the virgin birth. The only reason she got pregnant was God visited her. And according to the Bible, Joseph doesn't know language, right? Joseph is really kind of out of the loop. And at a certain point, he's visited by an angel and tells him, hey, Mary didn't cheat on you. That's the truth. That's not the Bible. But basically, that which is in her is born of the Holy Spirit. Okay, so it's like, hey, she's not cool. Right? She's not matter stoned or anything like that. So in art, first, the Bible doesn't, I think, say how old Joseph is. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it does. In art, he almost always appears as an old man. And part of the reason for that is this sort of visual shorthand to indicate that he is not and could not be the father of Christ. Right? He's past menopause. Right? Right? He's just, you know, free Viagra days, right? He's not the father of Christ. And you'll notice that the Dusha suddenly sort of sticks him outside of the shed as well. So it separates him away from the whole thing. So this is why when we see the angel appearing to Mary, the scene of the Annunciation, which we'll see in a second, right? We never see Joseph there. Or if we do, he's stuck in another room and sort of doing something else, right? Because he's unaware of the whole effect and has nothing to do. Right? So there's St. Joseph there, angels up above, lower right corner. Where are we looking at over there? Who are those two figures in the lower right corner? You notice that one of the angels is talking to them. Has a scroll out and is pointing over toward Jesus. See that about them? Right? Telling them where they need to go, what they need to be looking at. It's good for us as well, right? That's what I'm saying. Who are those two guys? They're shepherds. How did you come up with that guess? They have the sheep from them, and they use the sheepdog as well, right? Faithfully sitting in their feet. And they, you know, they haven't been converted yet, so they don't have halos. Shepherds are not going to have halos, they probably the requirements of the super few. They're not worthy. But they also are sort of more ragged clothing than any of the other figures. They sometimes have scars on their knees. He's got scuffs on his knees. That's that realism that we've been talking about, right? They also have satchels for things that they're carrying and musical instruments too, which shepherds always seem to have, because that's what they're doing when they're out there in the field, playing music. And we find this in medieval theater productions all the time, that they play musical instruments, right? So the angel is out hearing to them, but what's that? You need faces given to us, the words are worn off, but you can imagine that probably everyone can see them. And they're reacting to this. Where should we go? We should go over here. Okay. Notice the other realism that we see, similar to their costume in this manger where Christ is sitting, and right down to the straw that has been drawn. This picture, by the way, is not like yay. Right? A little bit less than a foot and a half square, give or take. Right? Okay. So we got those figures down below. We got the angels up above it, Joseph, Mary. In the foreground, what's going on down here in the foreground? We've got two other figures, women. Can we agree on that? In green and in purple. And there's a baby there with a halo. What do you think that is? Is that as though John the Baptist? Is that what you're suggesting? Right? It's a baptism of sorts, right? It looks like they're putting him in water, so it seems like a baptism thing. Christ's cousin was John the Baptist. John the Baptist is about 6 months older than Jesus. Right? This baby looks too much the same age, regardless. It's babies, right? We've seen it. So that's a plausible guess. Wrong. But it's a plausible guess, right? These are figures that you don't find in the Bible. Well, the women. These are midwives. This is another attempt at showing the religious scene with the realism that people could understand. And we find in some medieval narratives about the life of Christ, not the Bible itself, but other people who wrote about it, talk about the fact that the Virgin Mary had midwives attending her. That would make it for the women in the audience, similar to your own experience. The difference would be, of course, that the Virgin Mary, because of the virgin birth, didn't really need them. But they ended up being a sort of a common part of nativity scene. And so the figure that we see here being tended to, what a midwife is, right? Like an oxygen, right? A second individual, right? That's Christ the second time. And this is something we see often in Renaissance pictures, where in order to elaborate on a longer story within a single scene, you'll see figures repeat more than once. So Christ appears in this image twice. Once here, being looked at and worshipped, if you will, by his mother Mary, the object of the shepherd's quest. And he appears again being very realistically and naturalistically tended to by these two midwives in the foreground. So all of this is part of this iconography of the scene, right? There's quite a bit going on here. Now, we haven't talked about colors yet too much. One could get very deep into color symbolism, but I just wanted to mention a few things that we see with the Virgin Mary quite often. One is, you'll notice in each of these two, she's dressed pretty much in the same robe. That's one of the ways that Duccio gets us to follow the story. But that robe has a white veil and around her neck, then the blue robe over the top of that, and underneath a red blouse, right? The red, the white, and the blue are obviously deeply symbolic, and they are the colors that the Virgin Mary always wears. And there are reasons for these that we can find in medieval explanations of colors and their properties. White is a fairly obvious one because we still have it. What is white a symbol for? Purity, exactly. She's the Virgin Mary. She is pregnant but not by man. According to Catholic theology, she is never sleeps with a man. Right? So white is a symbol of her purity. Red is also a color that we still have quite a bit of symbolism equivalent. What is red? A color that we often, what kind of things do we often associate with the color red? Food? Say it like royalty is part of it. Actually, for the Middle Ages, purple is more of a royal color, right? But there are other things we think about. What are the things we see that are red? The devil is often in red, isn't he, right? Devil's in red? Why? He's damn angry all the time, right? He's mad at mankind. Outside of the religious realm, we think of red. Think about what happens if you see a movie poster that's got red all over it. Blood, right? Violence, deep-seated emotions. Think about what happens when you get embarrassed, right? Your face turns all red, yeah? All of these things we associate with the color red, and they did as well. So for the Virgin Mary to be wearing red underneath that robe is a symbol of the feelings she has in her heart. Because for Catholics, she knows, even at this early time, that Christ is born to die. But her job as his mother is, one, to protect him from the sort of the things that could happen up until that appointed moment. Right? And two, to be faithful to his cause. Right? Don't let her feelings get in the way. So she's got them bundled up on her knees. Right? Her compassion, her feelings, right? Her knowledge and the suffering that's going on at this point only inside her heart that she's keeping covered so well, right? The last thing we could point to then is the blue outer robe. And this is a bit more difficult because we don't have that same color symbolism today, I don't think. The blue, when we look back into how people explain colors in the Middle Ages, and into the early part of the Renaissance, blue is a symbol of faithfulness. And in this case, that fits with exactly what I was saying about the Virgin Mary. Her job as Christ's mom is to not get in the way of the plan, to be faithful to that plan. Right? That God has told her. That Christ has to die at one point, but at a particular moment. So she protects him early on. Remember the flower we saw with Giotto? Right? Protect him when he can't protect himself. But then don't intervene and get in the way when the plan starts to work out and you know it's going to be a nightmare. Right? To watch your son be tortured to death. She's got to sit around and watch that. That's her faithfulness. Right? So the colors that the Virgin Mary wears are in fact colors that have or come front-loaded with symbolic content. Right? At the same time, they're also indicative of Duccio's brighter, more opulent and rich colors that we talked about before. And this is even apparent in the angels up above. Look at those amazing greens and oranges as you get above the shed on either side. These are those bright colors of Duccio that set it apart from Giotto. Right? Now, I brought in something from the Walters just to show you. This is a little ivory plaque. It's about like this big. Right? But you can see it dates 300 years earlier. Right? To the 1000s. And it's part of a larger group of ivory plaques that somebody would have held themselves to pray with in their own privacy. But it shows the same thing. So there's the Virgin Mary, Christ behind her on the little manger. There's the ox and the ass. That ox is really great, isn't it? It's very funny looking. He's supposed to be the faithful one. And there's the donkey on the other side also. And there's the Virgin Mary leaning on her shoulder on the same sort of wicker pad. Very, very similar, isn't it, in the general land. It's just the opposite way around from what Duccio is doing 300 years later. There's Joseph seated, lower left corner, and again seated, just as you can Duccio. There's the two midwives with baby Jesus right front and center. There's one of the shepherds on the right, and the angel is actually talking to us. Right? So all of the details are already here, aren't they? And almost in the same place. Duccio's made a few fine adjustments here and there, but do you think it's a coincidence that all of the basic iconographic details were already there 300 years earlier in a work that he'd never seen before? Probably not, right? These iconographic details were the visual Bible for people who couldn't read. They were set pretty solidly early on. And what we see people like John were doing are just updating them with this new realistic style. Right? But not taking any drastic liberties with the sorts of things that they put there. He wants you to read, Duccio does, the shepherds more clearly, so he gives them sheep and a sheepdog. Right? They put Joseph a little bit closer to the Virgin Mary, but still somewhat separated from her. and in a very similar pose. A few more angels up above because he's not carving a little piece of ivory. He's instead painting on a panel. Allows that to be a bit fancier. Still has the hill, the grotto where this takes place, and there's even the light shining down from heaven above, which we can even see this little blue half orb in Duccio's for the same thing. Right? So there's no great iconographic innovations here. It's a lot of tradition that Duccio's working with. What's groundbreaking, what's Renaissance, is the realism. Right? And what's different from Giotto is this opulent elegance and color. Now, like I said, right, this is down lower left corner here in the Maestà altarpiece and the predella down below the front. This was originally placed behind the main altar in the nave of Siena Cathedral, roughly where that red line is. Once the city or the church had commissioned this from Duccio, they immediately turned to other artists to commission a series of paintings to go along next to it. So there were 4 more paintings commissioned to be seen in tandem with this one. So when you walked in the church, there was a huge screen of altarpieces. Right? The one in the center, the Virgin in heaven, with all of these other narrative scenes around the outside of it. The other ones, major scenes from the life of the Virgin Mary, because she was the city's patron saint. Right? One of these is in your textbook, and it's still in Siena today. And it shows this is the Annunciation, the announcement, right? Where the angel appears to the Virgin Mary to announce to her that she will bear the Son of God. This is how the miracle happens in Catholic theology. It's through hearing, through listening and understanding, which I kind of like, right? A little God can be born in you if you listen closely and understand, you know? So there's the angel appearing on the left. The painter is Simone Martini. There is a document in the church archives that names his son-in-law, brother-in-law, in-law, Filippo Memmi, as working on this as well. We don't know what he did. Maybe the figures on the side, maybe the frame. We're not sure. Most people think the central scene is painted entirely by Simone Martini, who was one of Duccio's students. Right? Simone Martini studied under Duccio, and probably was chosen for the altarpiece specifically for that reason, because they wanted them to present a sort of unified grouping. Right? Yeah. Still in Siena, not in the cathedral, but in the museum there. Right? That's where most of these things are, in the museum there instead. But, and I've highlighted in red, this is the first of the sequence. So it's off to the far left side. Right? So you get a basic idea of where these were. Okay, I've got a close-up of this so you can see also compared to Duccio's version from the Maestà. The angel comes in from the left. This is the norm. 99% of Annunciations have the angel come in from the left. I don't have a good explanation for that. Right? But the angel comes in from the left. In Duccio's, he's still standing. In Simone Martini's, he's kneeling in honor to the Virgin Mary. In each of them, the Virgin Mary has a book that's also fairly standard. She's reading at the time this happens. She's studying. Right? This is an interesting element of the Virgin Mary story, simply because when this was painted, most people couldn't read, and fewer women than men. Right? Reading was not a right. Reading was a luxury. Only the wealthiest in society could read, and it was usually the wealthy boys that learned. Sexist. Right? So the fact that the Virgin Mary can read is a way of establishing her as greater than most women, which is a hallmark of how people try to characterize the Virgin Mary. So the angel gestures as he talks, speaks the words to the Virgin Mary. She reacts in a relatively interesting way in each. In Duccio's work on the right, a little hesitant. Simone's work, maybe even a bit more hesitant. There's that realism again. Imagine if you're in your room at night, ladies, reading a book, and somebody comes in and says, you're about to get pregnant with the Son of God, right? And I'm here to help, right? There's this reaction on her face. It's just like, excuse me? Whose room is this, after all, right? And in fact, we can find numerous places in the 14th and 15th century people talk about the fact that the Virgin Mary went through a series of reactions to where she finally says, okay, I'm a servant of God. I'll do whatever I'm told. Right? But that these reactions were for shock, right? Then reluctance, and then acceptance. And it's almost as if both Duccio and Simone Martini's people are picking up on part of that. Okay? I'm so not even looking at my notes. Right? There's the angel with the nice Burberry lined cape that he's wearing. Angels don't have a gender. But you'll notice that telegraphic line that Duccio has, Simone Martini picks up as well. In particular, sort of in here, the line of the robe there, or even how this, comes around. It's got that same calligraphy that he picked up from looking at Duccio's work and studying it. It also has the same fantastic opulence that Duccio has, whether I just made the joke about that being like a Burberry coat. But there's that plaid to the cape that the angel wears. There's a brocading to the robe. There are these jewels and stitching and embroidery to the hems. It's all incredibly opulent and incredibly wealthy and rich looking. It's worth mentioning that Siena, unlike Florence, was a major center for textile production. And part of Duccio and Simone's interest in textiles probably comes from that. Nice close-up here. What I can see on mine, and you can't see on yours, is that on the sleeve there are words that have been embroidered. You may make them up here. M-E-A-S. And over here as well. We've got his name. Gabriel. Right here. G-A-B-R-I-E-L. Right? More words down here. I haven't had a chance to parse through this and sort of transcribe all of the different words that you see there. But you'll notice what he's doing is he's pointing to heaven above as he communicates, and he's speaking to the Virgin Mary. He's pointing up here to this, which is the dove of the Holy Spirit, surrounded by angels here. As he speaks, he's holding in his hand and wearing in his hair an olive branch from an olive tree. This is very, very symbolic. Have you ever heard of what an olive branch is symbolic for? It's peace, exactly. There's a old saying, here live in my head, right? I come bearing an olive branch. When you say that metaphor, I'm going to walk into an olive branch. But the point is, I come and say, I'm here to you, right? I'm here to sort of correct all the problems that we have. So the angel is bringing the olive branch because the message of Christ and his birth is going to bring peace to the earth. He is what Christians call a Prince of Peace, right? And this is the message that will bring peace between us rebellious humans and our God. Again, notice the incredible brocade, right? Everywhere you look, it's just so opulent. Duccio's work. So the angel has an olive branch in his hand, another, I believe it's a laurel wreath in his hair, and you can still see that halo that you were asking about before, now in fact sort of incised into the background, right? Not a different color from the background itself. Right? In between the Virgin Mary and the angel is a potted plant. Right? This is a lily. A lily was seen as another symbol for the Virgin Mary. We talked about the rose before, last week, right? How the rose grew from a thorny branch that gave a fragrant soft flower. That was Mary from the legacy of Eve coming up to him, right? Lilies not only are they the symbol of Easter, which you may know, but they were also the symbol of Mary because they were believed to be the smallest plant, just as Mary is the greatest woman. Not true, right? Sometimes. But still, that's what they said, right? Tallest plant, the white flowers, symbol of purity, real great part of that symbolism, right? It had very sharp leaves, and the Virgin was very discerning. Cut between, right? You cut between truth a lot. And it was on and on with all these different characteristics of mobility and how they added up to this flower being another of her many symbols. So that's there with her as a symbol of her character. As we look in front of the lily, we notice that there are uprays on the surface of the petal, a series of letters. We see this, and we go directly from the verb, the angel's mouth, open, you can see his tongue, right, all the way up here, and you can see it, to the Virgin's ear. I'm speaking to it. And it says, Ave gratia plena, Dominus tecum. These are the words that the angel speaks. Behold, Mary, behold, full of the grace of God, or full of grace, God is with you. And behold, Mary, full of grace, God is with you. Ave, gratia plena, full of grace, plan, full, right, grace, Dominus tecum, God is with you. The words are there for us to read. So we participate in this, right? We can read out loud the words that the angel said because they're upraised on the surface and lead from the angel to the Virgin Mary's ear. Directly above that, the angel is pointing upward to the dove of the Holy Spirit, surrounded by these little seraphs, bodiless angels in heaven, as the Holy Spirit comes down to fill Mary with the grace of God. Again, a couple more details here. The Virgin seems to shy away from the message as it reaches her ear. This is that first moment when she doesn't quite understand what's going on. She has been reading and keeps her place by putting her thumb in her book. You can't quite read the book, I think. I have to go back and look. But I brought this detail in simply because I wanted you to see more of this interest in the opulent detail, color, brocading that Simone Martini learned from studying under Duccio. These are hallmarks of art in Siena. You can see it everywhere we look. Okay. Now, I got about 10 minutes left. We're going to jump ahead. What's going on right now in Italian art, right? Early Renaissance art. We've got Giotto and Florence. Let's pull up our We got Giotto and Florence, and got Duccio and Siena, both working around 1300, 1330. That's the whole ball, right? In these two different merchant centers where things have gotten really secular. I mean, they're still very deeply religious. They're commissioning major religious works of art. And religious doesn't have gone away anyway, but the structure of society is built around trading, right? Modern capitalism. Way. Okay? And things are going gangbusters. We've got this new art that's really realistic, that seems to wrestle with the things of your world. You know? These wonderful brocades, right? Colors, this shading and chiaroscuro that looks as realistic as something you might see around you. You've got a new art for a new kind of people in a new environment in the early 14th century. They are all virtuous. What happens in the middle of the 14th century? 1348. The flat exactly. Born in place, 1348. Sweeps through Europe. In these major cities, which are more densely populated, more people die than in the countryside because it's a municipal disease. Right? So, why does that matter? One, Duccio died. All of Giotto's pupils died. Giotto's larger romantic film. all the pupils die. It kind of brings to a close this early Renaissance that we're talking about. Slams the door. And the people that survived the plague said, well, you know what God did this with? This is not a little too sexy. We've got a little bit too much interested in this stuff of this year. Maybe try to turn it back. Get back to, full-time religion. Get back to it. And what we see is immediately following the site for one reason or another, this generation afterwards, art starts to look more artificial, later, goes back to the pre-Renaissance style for a little bit, before it begins to pick up again a generation or so later. So the Black Plague, the bubonic plague of 1348, right, more or less halts the progress of the Renaissance started by Jesus. Did I go too long and you did it come up to you? Okay. So what we're going to do is jump ahead a bit and see what happens after that. Now, why did I have this? Duccio, Simone. Okay. Simone Martini survives the plague. And in fact, independent from the plague, begins to take this particular variation, right? The elegant, opulent, refined, brightly colored variation of Renaissance art. Simone Martini takes that style and he moves away from Siena in 1330, well before the plague. And he moves to France and spends the rest of his career working in the city of Avignon in France, right? So here's the end of this Florence, right? That's where we've been. In 1330, Simone Martini moves from her, 1337, I think, moves from Siena to Avignon. Spends the rest of his career in Avignon. And takes with him his talent, some of his pupils, and what we see happening when Simone Martini moves is that this particular variation of Renaissance art gets picked up in France because Simone's there. Okay? Now, does anybody know why Simone Martini might have wanted to move to Avignon in France? What's going on in Avignon in France? I mean, I want to go because I've been to Avignon. But it's French Riviera, right? There's olives and wine and Chateau de Sénat is right there, and food is fantastic, and the weather's fantastic. But there's something that brings Simone Martini to Avignon. You know the history well enough to know that. This is a big forehead. You ever heard of the Fusion Schism? The Great Schism, exactly right. In 1309, right, the French king intervenes in papal politics. Okay? It's a long story, it's a fantastic story. It's a really cool story. Don't have time for it, right? So the French king intervenes in papal politics. And ends up being the Pope driven out of Rome and puts in his place his own hand-picked son of deception. Right? At which point, and the whole point is that the current Pope was defying French king on all sorts of different things the French king wanted to. Most of them are pretty wonderful ones, and the state of Syria. So he has the Pope driven from Rome, has him accused of sleeping with dogs or something like that, right? And gets him driven out of Rome, puts in Clement VII, his own Pope. And Clement VII in 1309 moves from Rome to Avignon because he's basically the puppet of the French king. He's going to be closer to daddy, right? So to speak. And this is part of the reason why we've been talking about where does the Renaissance start? Florence and Siena. Rome ain't even in the picture because the Pope was in Rome. Right? Pope is here in Avignon. Clement VII has a new court there. Massive, the palace is still there. You know, this is and Simone Martini is going there in order to make his career working around the papal court. Okay? It's a job working for the Pope, numerous other artists working in the same style, this sort of Papal exile, papal schism lasts more than 100 years, right? Popes aren't back into Rome until the 15th century. Okay? At one point, there were 3 different popes at the exact same time. I think it was confusing when Francis took over, right? And they were all claiming to be pope at the same time. When Simone Martini takes this style he learned under Duccio and moves to Avignon and takes it with him, we as historians refer to it as the International Gothic style because it's still kind of old school. I've been talking about it as Renaissance, right? But he begins to spread this style first to Avignon, and after Avignon, it spreads to every court in Northern Europe. All of these kings and emperors would come down to visit the Pope, right? See these works that are there and want their own versions because they're opulent, right? They're really eye-catching with their colors. They're very elegant. These reek of money well spent, right? You can see the results of what you spent your money on, and everybody begins to want this. And we see it spread from Avignon to Prague, current-day Czech Republic. We see it spread to the Low Countries, Belgium and Holland. We see it spread through the rest of France. We see it in Spain. We see it in England. We see it everywhere because of Simone Martini making this great move. So with the International Gothic style, we have a couple of works locally that we could look at. And we'll start with one and then we'll wrap it up, not keep you late. Up in the WAM stands for Walters Art Museum. It's in Baltimore. It's free as well, by the way. Not tax money, they just decided they wanted it to be free to rival the DC Museum. And this is this little altarpiece. It was a little traveling devotional work. It's pieced together, and originally there were 4 panels that would stop together. Right? And it's only about like this big. And you could carry it with you everywhere you went, and use it to sort of set it up to pray. And it's exactly meant to be used that way, where you would get in close, look at it really closely, and use it for your private devotions. And so there were 4 separate things that painted on both sides, front and back, that could fold up and put in a bag and carry it with you on your travels. Right? You can pray anywhere. You don't necessarily need to have an altarpiece in the church. And if you look at the Annunciation scene on the left, you can see some of the same things that we've been talking about with Simone Martini. This is, again, almost 100 years later, right? 65, 70 years later. And yet the style has still got incredibly richly colored, incredibly calligraphic and elegant outline, a great interest in pattern and detail. All of these things that Simone Martini and Duccio had been doing in Siena are now being done in the Low Countries. This comes from what is today Belgium. And it's been split up, and half of it's in Antwerp, half of it's in Baltimore. Right? So there's a detail of the Annunciation scene, and you can see we have all of the same details. There's the angel coming in, kneeling down again, delivering his message that you can see written on the surface, Ave Gratia Plena, Dominus Tecum. Now it's on a banner rather than on the background. The Virgin is reading again. The dove of the Holy Spirit comes down toward her again. She is backed by an opulent orange bolt of fabric again. Right? All of these things are part of that International Gothic style that Simone Martini has brought forward. Now we'll look at this more in depth on Thursday. Remember that on Thursday your first worksheet is due. You have to do 10 out of the 15, which means you can skip the first one if you want to as you manage your time. But I will grade the best 10 that you turn in. All right? I'll see you on Thursday, and have a good